Thank you all so much for coming today. This is our second annual Red Dress MMIW G2S LGBTQ Trans Day. Red Dress Day, Murder Missing Indigenous Women and Girls, Two-Spirited, acknowledging and remembering, honoring the loss of our Indigenous women, people who have been abducted or murdered. So I'm so grateful to see so many faces. Thank you so much for Saskatchewan Public Schools, our BERM director, Nahani Olson, who's made sure that there are so many young faces here, because you all are the ones that will help us to carry this and maybe solve it for us. So I'm so grateful that you're here. Today is an incredibly important day, and as I'm driving to work today, I hear nothing about it on the radio. I'm watching the news last night, and I see nothing about it on the news. And outside of the announcements that our comms team on campus have been able to put in, and the very little that has been acknowledged within the newspaper, it gives us a very stark reality of why this is such an important day for us to acknowledge it, to honor it, and to talk about it every single day, that it's not just today, but it's every day that we're fighting this battle to save our people. I am the interim Vice-Provost, Indigenous Engagement for the University of Saskatchewan. I'm Pitt River from Northern California, on the northeastern side of Mount Shasta, and in the States we acknowledge Red Dress Day in many different ways as well. My past institution, this was a day of remembrance and honoring and discussing and coming together and healing, as well as supports for those families that have been touched by this. Yesterday, the Office of the Vice Provost Indigenous Engagement viewed a movie called Who She Is, and it's directed by someone I know, Jordan Dresser, who is a graduate of the University of Wyoming. And the movie took on a different life for me than I had expected. I had seen the trailer and I was prepared. You know, you mentally and psychologically get prepared for what you're about to see. The movie was beautiful. It was all about the lives of a few of the Indigenous women who've been abducted or murdered, one of which was abducted and survived her abduction, and the aftermath of her healing. But it was all done in watercolors, and the stories of who they are and their favorite colors and their children's names and their lives was so impactful on myself and my team who were able to watch the movie. And so I really encourage you to step outside of your comfort zone. I'm certain it's on YouTube. We do have a link that we can share with you, and to just take the 45 minutes to watch the movie. It was absolutely beautiful to know that they're not just a number, they're not just a statistic, but these people are human. They have lives, they have families. They have loved ones and colleagues, and it was important to recognize that and to hear their beautiful stories. So please take the time to watch the movie. One of the things that the directors did say was that since doing this project and even before, they talked about the importance of saying the person's name and talking about who they are, and not just the day of, but remembering and honoring. And so I encourage you to do that today. There are many different websites and lists of names of women who have been abducted, two-spirited, who've been murdered and abducted, trans people who've been abducted and murdered, and we're honoring them today. One of the ways that the University of Saskatchewan makes a commitment to this is through the calls for justice. And as you walk through the bowl, I encourage you to read not just the orange Truth and Reconciliation banners, but also the purple banners that are the calls for justice for the MMIW, 2S, LGBTQIA issues and concerns. And so they're not all of them, but they're the ones that the university has an impact on. And so please take the time to walk through the bull today and any day and read them, think about them, and make a commitment yourself to how you're going to change the way this plays in your life. You're having these conversations with your family, your friends. You're taking the time to make a difference. We do have, and one of those ways can always be through monetary support. So we do have a donation box, and that I will have up here on the ledge for the Iskiwewak Iwich Iwiti to Cheek. By the end of it, I'm going to have it right. But that community is a coalition of women and men, families, activists, academics, and grassroots community members. They focus on efforts in providing moral support to the families of missing, murdered Indigenous women and girls. They work at raising awareness and prevention through education and political action. They focus on the systematic nature of interlocking issues such as racism, classism, elitism, and colonization, which contributes to violence against women, specifically Indigenous women. They remain committed to the work and other organizations and are committed to social justice and peace. And today we're going to hear from one of their leaders to talk a little bit about that group as well as her own experience. So at this time, I'm going to call up Miss Linda Young. She is one of our knowledge keepers that works directly with the Office of the Vice-Provost Indigenous Engagement, the College of Education, and many other departments on campus. She's from Onion Lake Cree Nation. She's also the proud mommy of Nahani Olson, who's our BIRM director, and one of our speakers today, Lua Gibb. So please help me welcome Linda Young.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks. Uge maus news go is digasan. En anas ko moyan e begis ksumagawan kstemao, kabegagi sumoyan kabebix ko yan kabehat sumoyan. Tatamskat na kakyo no hagumaganak. Uskayak, snamagewak, nitiskowak. Good morning. I shared with you my Cree name, Ukimawas Nilsko, and my English name is Linda Young, and my residential school name is Mary Ann Linda Young, and my number at residential school was 47. And so I'm a survivor, 10 years, and in residential school in Onion Lake. So I wanted to, first I give thanks for this beautiful day. I give thanks to the organizers who've invited me to be part of this gathering of people who are supporting the girls, the women, and all of those who have experienced some kind of, not some kind of pain, but all kinds of pain. I actually wrote notes, so I'm going to take it out just so I don't forget, when you're my age. So I just have to share a little story with you first. So it's a full moon, right? So last night, all the women who honor the full moon know this. So I've been putting water out every full moon. And sometimes we think, oh, that doesn't work. You can put water out, it doesn't really mean much. Sometimes we have these doubts. So I started putting water out. and during the full moon. And I put it, my mom always said 4 days before the full moon, 4 days after, that's the length of time that the energy is, that the grandmother moon offers us. And so I've been doing this. And one of the things that I noticed that was so wonderful was the orchids bloomed and they bloomed and they bloomed, and I was giving them this water, this special water. And so I want to share that with you because we need to honor water as part of our life. And so last night I said to my husband, let's just put water in a huge jug and we'll put it outside. But what we're finding is that the full moon is rising at a different place now, so we're looking for it. Where's that full moon? And so we could put our water out. And then last night about midnight I went outside and I thought, oh, I don't think that's the right place for it. I think anyways, I was chasing this water around and chasing the moon, and anyway, so that's my funny experience, and I think a teaching for me from Grandmother Moon. So I'm Plains Cree, I speak Y dialect Cree. And I'm really hoping to be able to share a song with you. I'm not going to sing, don't worry. I used to be able to sing some songs, but I don't anymore. Like my voice sounds like those kokums that sit in the church and they sing hymns, and I just lost that ability to be able to sing. So I'm going to share, hopefully, a song with you that Tia Wood shared quite a few years ago. So there's some thoughts that I have about today. First of all, I want to dedicate my time here, my sharing, to my sister Connie. My sister Connie, she's my youngest sister. I come from a family of a fairly large family. I have 5 brothers and 5 sisters, and Connie is our youngest in the family, our youngest sibling. In 2005, my niece, Jarita, was murdered in Lloydminster. And the reason I'm dedicating this time to my sister is because the intergenerational trauma that comes from this kind of action when someone is taken from us goes on, and it's so harmful. And so I see that in my sister. I see how much she suffers. I see it in my nieces and nephews and how much they suffer. And so for me, if you're connected to somebody, and we all are in one way or another, to a loss, that's what we need to focus on today. So I want all of us to dedicate our time here. Energy, being here and taking time to be here is just as important as offering service in the community, because you're taking time, you're taking your energy to be here. So thank you for everyone who has taken time to come and sit with us in this circle. There are thoughts that come to my mind before I offer my acknowledgement. I want to share these thoughts with you. The first is water, and the treaty statement, as long as the sun shines, the grass grows, and the rivers flow. We always say, and the waters flow. And the reason that this is important for me to share is because the waters, from a grandmother's, a kukum's understanding, is the amniotic fluid where babies are taken care of for the first 9 months of their life as they come into this world, and they're getting ready to come into the physical world. And in my view, as long as we do not take care of the environment, the water, the air, we're also not taking care. It's showing up in the loss of women. It's showing up in the violence against women. So if you wanted to do something, start by taking care of the land. Start by taking care of the water, giving thanks for the water. I see people with water bottles that they've brought with them or given to them. Give thanks for that water. It's just so important because it's just a small act, but in this way, we are acknowledging women. And as soon as we begin to really take care of the land, we will see that the women are also taken care of, the women and the girls. I want to share this story, and I'm actually thinking twice about it, but I will share it because it's a very personal story. When I was pregnant with my daughter, Lua, and I went to the hospital to deliver her, and when she was born, and you know how they say, is it a boy, is it a girl? And I was told she's a girl, and I felt sad in my heart because I thought girls have so much trouble, and I didn't want her to have that. I wanted her to have love and to be protected. And so that's how I felt. And that was based on my own experience as a female. Protect your girls, protect your daughters, protect your sisters, protect your moms, protect your aunties, and protect your kokoms. I'm going to offer the acknowledgement, and I'm offering it in Cree because I speak Plains Cree dialect. And I offer my prayer, and I acknowledge the grandmothers first in my prayer, in my acknowledgement. And I ask for us to have kindness in our hearts. I ask for us to have understanding, to be able to listen with kindness and mindfulness, to be able to see the world in a way that is beautiful, and to be able to walk on this land in a way that takes care of the earth. So when I'm acknowledging the grandmothers, I say Mamoyugawi, which is the mom of all, the mother of all. Nogamatayogan is sacred grandmother. Nogum Tipskapism is grandmother moon. Ugawi Mawaski is Mother Earth. These are the grandmothers that I acknowledge in my prayer. And then I'm hoping to be able to play a song for you that is also, to me, a prayer song. Mamoyugawi Mao. Nugumatayogan Nogum Tipskapism Ugawi Mawaski. Nanaskaman asimina kutakisakaw yami iyawihia yegatipitigin. Nanaskamaw kakyo takapetu tetsikipento takik. Kakyo skoa kuskayak. Napewak. Enanaskamoyan epekis samagawayan stemaoni sakapepix koyan kapekakis moyan. Epoksema ke kakyo ke musumno ko komno kapesitos kagoyakik. Kapewi tapin goyakik. Kapesakin skain goyakik. Pagsemon nista kakyo. Kagiwani hayakik o giskog. Squesak. Sinikskog. Kanagateimitik. Nte aiman huma. Kawaniit. Auya kawawumagak. Kasagi hayakik o giskog. Tawasim snog. Kitan snog. Pagsemuan kanagatim gawaya. Magiwik skate manis na makatatugi sa gaway pagsemua. Kwes kapmotea. Kawiti gawaya. Kasitos ka gawaya. Sawaymenan. Tamagaymenan. Waitinan. Nanaskamon. 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 That's not the song. Okay, I'm not very good with technology, so here's hoping this works. It's from my phone. So the Cree words in this song are Nutaweo Atayogan, Kisewatson, Nutaweo Atayogan, Timagame Nan. Old woman spirit who is kind and compassionate. Old woman spirit, have pity on us. Give us your blessing. So Tia sings this 4 times in 4 directions. So here goes. Thank you for that. And every morning, I check my Facebook to see if my sister is okay, my youngest sister. Every night before I go to bed, I check to see if she's okay. In the middle of the night, I wake up and I check Facebook to see if she's okay. This is what we live with when we have lost somebody in our lives. Thank you for allowing me to share my heart, my tears with you. Ay.
Thank you, Linda. That was beautiful. And thank you for sharing this story with us. I think that's impactful and people need to hear that. Today we have the honor of having Teedley Linkleader and Kulia to come and speak and to sing for us. I first heard them September 27th of 2021 when they came. We were just coming out of COVID, and it was Truth and Reconciliation week of reflection, and the campus was lit in orange. The mistatimôk committee had worked so hard to put things together, and Candace and Wasaki Lafferty and her team had put the center on display to be a part of a national lighting. And these two sang most beautifully that day, and so we're so grateful that you're here today.
Habuju and Denwe Magnaduk, Teedley Linkleader Indigenous Cash, Gaptukuna Ochinia, Saskatchewan and Dojiba, Hi Nanaskaman, Gakiogi Guayoche, Kinanaskum Tin Gatabechiget, Hi. I'm going to share a song for you that was gifted to me by Nagawi, and it's a woman's honor song, and I'm going to sing it with Indigenous Wabanokwe. So.
Thank you so much, Quila and Teedley. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. Next, we have our Provost and Vice President, Dr. Irene, to bring us welcome words and greetings.
Hello, bonjour, and in the languages of the First Peoples of these lands of Treaty 6 and the homeland of Métis, Tansei, Tansi, Etlanate, Han, Anin. Thank you for the honor to follow these voices and song today, speaking for our University of Saskatchewan community. As I begin, I'd like to say thank you to our knowledge keeper, Linda, for your starting us in a good way, for reminding us to honor water, to take care of the land, and how profound it is for each of us to be here today together. From my ancestry to yours. Thank you also for the honor song and how the rhythm and the words entered us and brought us together. Thank you. Dr. Angela Jaime and the incredible team of the Office of the Vice-Provost Indigenous Engagement, thank you for all that you have done with so many who are here across our university to make it possible together, make it possible for this day to be visible as it should be. And everyone, thank you for, as Elder Linda has said, for dedicating time to gather together today here at the Gordon Oaks Red Bear Student Centre, which is protected, looked after so incredibly by our Senior Director, Candice Wasser-Case-Lafferty, and her amazing team here as well. It's so important that we as a university community gather so that we can prepare ourselves for action as educators, researchers, administrators, support professionals and students, action for ending violence against Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, questioning, intersex, and asexual members of our community at large. Red Dress Day is also known as National Day of Awareness for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and two-spirit people, and is observed each year on this day of May the 5th. And while the media is silent largely, this shows that the people are not. We are here together to ensure this day is visible, is real, and is part of our work for change. We've come together today because we know violence is real, as is trauma, and this is not the end of the story. We are part of the change to that story. I want to be steady in my own voice in coming here, holding the role of your Provost and Vice President academic, and yet in truth I also want to hold space, to breathe, to take in being here together, and I want to pause in truth because this is so real. It's possible, though, to come forward and to find some steadiness because I have the best view of our future. I have the best view of our understanding of our responsibility and our ability to take action as a university, as a community, with our secondary school students here at this University of Saskatchewan. This day in Canada was inspired by Métis artist Jamie Black's Red Dress project. Her art installation featured red dresses in various environments to represent missing and murdered Indigenous women, and this sparked a national movement. And what's real is that there are women, girls, and 2SLGBTQQIA plus people who are no longer here, whose names we may know and we hold and whisper perhaps right now. So when we see the red dresses, when we see the colour of red today, we know there's hurt. We know there is grief. And so somehow we steady ourselves, we gather, and we breathe together, short on words, and yet calling on determination. Today we meet to show solidarity with survivors, with family, friends, and loved ones. And we're here together, ready for action as a university, as the University of Saskatchewan takes action. So the final report of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls included the voices of more than 2,380 family members, survivors of violence, experts and knowledge keepers, and it delivered 231 calls for justice directed at governments, institutions, and all Canadians. What then will be our calling as one of those institutions here in Canada? Well, we've all seen the calls for justice on outdoor banners around the bowl at the heart of our Saskatoon campus. And we've heard from Angela the call to pause, to read the calls for justice, to do that today on Red Dress Day, and indeed any day that we're walking through the bowl. Let's give that 1 minute to read and learn from these powerful words. And as we read the calls for justice, let's be reflective. Let's prepare to be the change. We can educate ourselves on the root causes of this national tragedy, our second action that we can take. And we can then have important, bold conversations on how we will work together for systemic change, for community change, to confront violence and injustice, to change that story, to change that reality. We have that within our means as this university. Because there is this work that only a university can do, and really that only this university can do. We know that we educate the judiciary, the teachers, the philosophers, the engineers, the artists, the policymakers, the health professionals. We educate so that our students and our graduates are ready to care and to take action. This too is what we can do together. So as we are here, seated, standing, we can be thinking of that one action today that we can take on as students, as graduates, as University of Saskatchewan members, community members, one action that shows we are ready to care and to take steps against this persistent experience of human and Indigenous rights violations and abuses behind this country's staggering rates of violence against Indigenous women, girls, and 2SLGBTQQIA plus people. We can today, as we listen, as we reflect, we can identify that start, that single bead in this great design of beadwork that we are, that one action. We are all one university. We are all gathered here to show our care and concern for every member of our community. So with our breath, with the steadiness we find from being together, we come to remember everything that Red Dress Day is about. We come to prepare ourselves for action, our own action, as secondary school students, community members, University of Saskatchewan students and colleagues, because for Saskatchewan, yes, and from Saskatchewan, we come together as what the world needs from this day forward. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Irene. Next is one of our keynote speakers for today, the Honorable Lua Gibb. Judge Lua Gibb is a provincial court judge sitting in Saskatoon. She is from the Onion Lake Cree Nation and is an intergenerational residential school survivor who is a dedicated champion of truth and reconciliation. Judge Gibb attended the University of Saskatchewan, graduating from the College of Law in 2005, and was called to the bar in both Saskatchewan and BC. As a lawyer, Judge Gibb appeared in all levels of court in both provinces. She was appointed to Saskatoon Provincial Court in January 2020. She was the youngest sitting judge in all of Canada at the time, and later that year was recognized as one of CBC's Saskatchewan's top 40 under 40 for her work in the courts. She's also the beautiful daughter of Miss Linda Young. Please help me welcome her to this.
Good morning, everyone. Listen, learn, and reflect on the truths about violence against Indigenous women and gender-diverse persons is how today's event was described. I hope to share a little about what I've learned with you and that we can reflect together. I want to first acknowledge that we are gathering here today on Treaty 6 territory, the homeland of the Métis, and the first modern self-governance treaty signed by the Dakota Nation in Canada. I want to thank Elder Linda Young and my mom for her prayer, and Teedley and Kulia for their honor song. There is no reconciliation without truth. There's no truth without holding safe spaces for the sharing of our experiences. So I'm grateful to the University of Saskatchewan for holding space on this day to commemorate missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and 2SL LGBTQIA+. I will refer to Indigenous women and girls and gender diverse persons, and I just want it to be abundantly clear that if I default to saying women and girls, I want you all to know that is inclusive of all those who identify with the feminine spirit. My talk will address murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls in the context of my experience in the courts. I want you to know that in advance so that you can understand that it can be triggering, and I want you to be safe with me this morning. I'm here today to speak about my own truths and learnings. I've dedicated my professional career to reconciliation, relationship building, and education on unconscious bias, systemic barriers faced by Indigenous justice participants, including accused persons and victims. How did I get to this place? I'm the daughter of a residential school survivor. I'm also the first generation of children in my family who did not attend residential school, but first to learn about what intergenerational trauma is and how that would impact our lives. I'm a member of Onion Lake Cree Nation, but my home has been in this community for the last 30 years. Growing up, I felt no connection to anywhere. We moved frequently, and each year I started in a new school and sometimes two. I am a graduate of this university's College of Law, and I'm very proud to have attended a university with one of the largest student populations Indigenous student populations in our country. Together, we forged friendships and bonds over the common purpose of healing our communities and exemplifying Indigenous excellence through resilience and hard work. I learned about the importance of forging connections with Indigenous people in a way I had never known growing up in the city. I'd often been the lone Indigenous person in my classroom until university. It was also in university that my interest in justice flourished, and it was ignited even more through learning about Indigenous history, sociology, criminal theory. And I'll never forget, in one of my criminology courses, author Warren Goulding came to speak about his book, Just Another Indian, about serial killer John Martin Crawford, who preyed on Indigenous women here in Saskatoon. And back then I could feel the draw towards the criminal justice system and wanting to explore the injustice felt by Indigenous communities and families. I also remember feeling the indifference by the broader community at the loss of Indigenous life, how painful that was. I worked on the front lines of the courts for 15 years before I was appointed. I was a Crown prosecutor. And although there are a few people that did not understand why I would work on that side of the courtroom, I knew in my heart that institutional change comes with marginalized folks like myself sitting at all tables and taking up space. I also felt equipped to hold space for Indigenous victims, and I spent many hours sitting in soft rooms, sitting in courtrooms, sitting in my office with Indigenous families who had experienced gender violence, sexual violence, interfamilial violence, and simply just random acts of violence. They felt the intimidation of a system that was built on systemic racism, the very thing that was shared by family after family at the MMIWG testimonies. And in my own experience, I could relate deeply to the hesitation families felt in coming forward, the fear of being disbelieved, judged, or ignored, because I had seen over and over the palpable relief when Indigenous families worked with me in the courts. I could see their faces and their bodies instantly relax. Our kinship brought us together even as strangers. In my current position, I take my role very seriously to hold space for Indigenous justice participants because I know innately the experience of coming before a judge and the vulnerability of being exposed to the court process. I have witnessed how colonial harms have created generation after generation of trauma and adversity. I know the vulnerabilities of being an Indigenous woman in a province where safety is not guaranteed, and the risks for our gender diverse relatives who face gender violence and the vulnerability of living in full expression of themselves. This sense and feeling was captured by the MMIWG Commission in their final report and their comments on colonial violence and the normalization of interpersonal violence, systemic discrimination, and apathy by the greater community. As an Indigenous community, we have known for decades that Indigenous women have been particularly vulnerable to violent victimization. We have witnessed the likes of John Martin Crawford and Robert Pickton, Canada's serial killers who preyed on Indigenous women. For years, advocates in the downtown east side of Vancouver pleaded with police that there was a killer who was targeting women, and unsurprisingly, it was largely Indigenous women who made up the population located around Main and Hastings. And as I entered my career as a prosecutor, I couldn't prepare myself for the number of homicides, sex assaults, aggravated assaults, unlawful confinements, violent crimes, and so many of them involving Indigenous victims. The grisly discoveries made by police then and now only confirm again and again what we already know. Indigenous women are the targets of violence. What hurts even worse is the realities of the treatment of the bodies of our daughters, our sisters, our aunties, our mothers. My heart breaks and my stomach churns every time I hear or I read about another Indigenous woman or girl found disposed of, dumped, desecrated. It is a steady reminder that the sanctity of Indigenous lives is so easily forgotten, but not by us. And it's not only the serial killers or the highway of tears that we're speaking about, it's the sole missing woman or girl. It's the cumulative number of missing or murdered women and girls that must be addressed, the totality of lives lost that demonstrate in no uncertain terms that there is a crisis of violence towards Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse persons. It's also the reality of the barriers faced, including residential instability, addiction, cycles of abuse and trauma that play out in the criminal courts and the child welfare system. It requires a systemic response and action to stop the cycle by equipping individuals with opportunities and tools to thrive in the community. Vulnerability is increased and it's amplified by addictions and mental health. It's also the examination of the interplay between the life cycles of Indigenous people who become entrenched in these systems from early childhood and understanding the cycle that when we incarcerate Indigenous women, there's a higher likelihood their children will be apprehended. And what happens when they're released? Residential instability and lack of housing is also a large piece in the safety of women and children. Initiatives like that of the STC Wellness Center that have, at least anecdotally, as I see in my work, has improved situations because vulnerable people have a place to stay. and the transitional housing unit that's just opened up for women coming out of incarceration back into the community speaks to what happens when someone is released. The issue is not only violence against women, but how we are preventing women from becoming more vulnerable. In Saskatchewan, overrepresentation of women in the correctional facilities is increasing, and over the last decade, the average of incarcerated individuals has steadily been at 75% Indigenous in Saskatchewan. You may be asking yourself, well, I didn't expect that Judge Gibb would come here and stand here and talk about herself and her work. This isn't supposed to be a presentation, and I didn't come here to focus on what I know, but to shine a light on how we are the same. We are bound by the loss of kinship and the violence that we bear witness to in our lives, in the media, in our community. It is what bonds us all across Turtle Island, and we don't carry this burden alone. We are here to share it with Indigenous nations across the continent, and it is our bravery in speaking our truth and our lived experience that strengthens us together here, not just today, but every day. I feel the privilege of my safety so deeply in my life, and I realize that statistically, it's more likely that Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse persons are to be the victims of crime, because 2 out of 3 Indigenous women are not safe from sexual violence. And between 2015 and 2020, Indigenous women made up 24% of homicide victims in Canada. And 1,484 family members and survivors had the courage to come forward and share their experience with the MMIWG Commission, including my aunt and my mom and my sister. When I read their testimonies, I was so moved by their bravery to stand there and open their hearts and their grief. It reminded me why I was called to this work. And that is what I think about on the hardest days, the days I want to quit because I can't bear the heaviness of the grief. I think about the King and Hurley 2010 SCC 18. What is that? That's the pinpoint citation for the Supreme Court of Canada decision of the man charged with the murder of my younger cousin. I was an articling student in 2005. I had just started a 1-month clerkship with the Court of King's Bench, as it's now known, and it had only been a couple of days into my clerkship when my mom called me to tell me that my cousin had been killed. I drove home immediately from Regina, and we went to the reserve. I'll never forget that experience, the rawness of the loss, staring at my beautiful baby cousin's face, and in her face seeing all of ours. The man who was charged with her murder would have 2 jury trials. The first one, he was convicted, and his case appealed to the highest court in this country and was sent back for a second trial. He was acquitted the second time and walked away. I never wanted to be a criminal lawyer. I never dreamed of becoming a Crown prosecutor. But that day my fate changed, and I knew that my calling was in the courts as an advocate for change to a system that left so many of us brokenhearted. Reading my mom's testimony that she shared at the MMIWG truth-gathering process was profoundly moving to me. They testified in front of the Chief Commissioner, Marion Buller, who coincidentally was also the first First Nations woman appointed to the BC Provincial Court in 1994. My mom shared what my kukum said at the funeral, that my cousin sacrificed her life for us so that we could have a spiritual awakening. And that moved me so much. The capacity that we have as a people to see the love of Creator in all things, even the suffering. That the lives lost to the physical realm still live on in our conviction to change these systems and places that were historically institutions of colonialism. So what was the spiritual awakening? For me, it was the desire and the igniting of the desire to be an agent for change. I worked as an advocate for many years, and in the community, I worked towards transformative justice embedded in restorative law and inclusivity. I have always viewed access to justice as the experience of not only being heard, but being seen. When we feel seen, we feel understood, and that is the experience of speaking truth authentically and safely. I make the commitment every day to ensure that my actions do not diminish or erase the lived experience of the people in my court, to reclaim safety in a setting that historically discriminated against Indigenous people as a mechanism of colonialism and assimilation policies. In the courts, it was the actions of all the contributors to the MMIWG Commission's final report and the advocates who called on legislators to protect and recognize Indigenous women as being particularly vulnerable, that Parliament responded by amending the Criminal Code. The Criminal Code was amended to reflect the significance of intimate partner violence and the impacts on victims and public safety. The legislative amendments considered the dynamic of intimate partner violence, the high victim impact, the particular cycles of violence, and the complexities of violence and power in intimate partner relationships required due consideration of the protection of victims. Amendments were made to require in sentencing that judges consider the increased vulnerability of female victims, with particular attention given to the circumstances of Indigenous female victims. Denunciation and deterrence as primary sentencing objectives, where the abused person is vulnerable due to their personal circumstances, including because she is Indigenous and female. I find the reforms that were made to the Criminal Code in this area speak to the seriousness of the particular nature of violence, which includes the children exposed to family violence and the cycles that predictively show that intimate partner violence is repeated and it escalates in seriousness over time without intervention. It also reflects a change in principle that would emphasize deterrence and denunciation and recognition that Indigenous women are more likely to be victimized violently. It also requires, though, police and prosecutors to be more inquiring about the victim and to ensure that questions are asked about who the victim is and how that may impact sentencing or release. The amendments are only useful if the Crown and police are gathering that relevant information for the courts and relying on these amendments. As a provincial court, we have an Indigenous Communities Committee of Judges, and we are creating protocols with the Chief Judge of the Provincial Court that reflect reconciliation and commitment to access to justice for Indigenous people. One protocol that has been developed is for smudging, and the very first smudge ceremony took place in Saskatoon this past year. This was as a result of one of the cases involving MMIWG2S. The participants requested to smudge before the proceeding. This was significant for the family because I can say from my personal experience and from my observations in court, as Indigenous people, we are good with grief. We are strong enough to bear that. We've suffered extraordinary amounts of grief and loss through residential schools, assimilation policies, and the systems that enforce them. I've witnessed that it's the re-traumatization and the reinforcement of the mistreatment that diminishes the trust of Indigenous people with the criminal justice system, the very thing that's meant to protect us and keep our communities safe. A simple act of acknowledging our ways and incorporating them in the traditional legal system is reconciliation in the courts. I was raised in a home where we were taught to be compassionate, to be grateful, and to give thanks to Creator. And every day I give thanks for my calling, and I ask that Creator, the grandmothers and grandfathers, guide me and help me live my life in a good way. And I give thanks for the women out here today championing for our murdered and missing sisters, daughters, and relatives, protecting those of us who are still here. I give thanks for my mother, my kokum, my aunties, my sister, all really, really tough women who survived, and I'm here because of them. I give thanks for my daughters who inspire me to keep showing up again and again. I'm also so very grateful to be here today with all of you, but in particular with my mom and my sister. The three of us here today shows the intersect of our professional work and the unbreakable bonds of love. And I hope that will show you that our people and our communities are healing and thriving. Love is the most powerful healer, and I can feel the tremendous energy of our love here with our families for the Indigenous women in our life who are present and those who are gone. I'm also inspired by the work of Maya Angelou, in particular her quote on courage, and she said, "I'm convinced that courage is the most important of all virtues, because without courage you cannot practice any other virtue consistently. You can be kind for a while, you could be generous for a while, you can be just for a while or merciful for a while, even loving for a while, but it is only with courage that you can be persistently and insistently kind and generous and fair." As a judge, I've learned what it means to be fair. I've also learned the incredible power of kindness. In my life, I have learned to be courageous, to speak my truth and show up fully as myself, not just as Judge Gibb, but as the person who remains when the judge's gown is hung up, When we bring our lived experiences to these systems and unapologetically take up space as our resilient, courageous, barrier-breaking, truth-speaking selves, transformative change flourishes, and we honor the lives of our lost and stolen sisters. When I leave the courthouse, I leave as an Indigenous woman. I go back into my community, and my experiences involve racism, being followed around in stores, at the mall, and it includes having strangers follow me or persistently talk to me in public places. And it reminds me that statistically there's a far greater likelihood that I will be the victim of violence, and that includes random assaults. And so I am very grateful for the champions, those raising awareness of MMIWG2S, because their courage is paving the path to safety for all of us so that we can walk freely without fear of being harmed. In closing, I just want to speak briefly about fairness and justice. And so often the image of Lady Justice comes up and her blindfold that represents judicial decision-making and that the courts are to be unbiased, as this is a fundamental principle of fairness. When I became a judge, my sister commissioned a beautiful ribbon skirt with me with an Indigenous Lady Justice. And I'm also moved to come here today and see the t-shirts that are being handed out that again show the blindfold with justice. What I want to speak to that is I've also learned that it is just as important, if not more, that justice cannot turn a blind eye to the inequities in our community and call that equality. Fairness requires being fully informed of the realities of the lived experiences of Indigenous people in Canada so that we are not unconsciously biased in justice or the institutions meant to protect us. I am so grateful for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judge Gibb. That was an amazing speech and so thoughtful in your words. We next have two speakers. Carson, are they here? Okay, just double checking. So we have two speakers today that I was impacted by their work through a colleague of mine who he and his family wrapped around me and my family when we came in to this community, Dr. LaBelle and Doctors LaBelle, Katie and Mo, introduced me to decolonial clothing. That's the makers of this t-shirt, of the t-shirt that this beautiful man is wearing that says F colonialism. I won't say it out loud. And so many others. The new shirt that you saw the provost wearing. And it's really those kinds of statements that we can wear to evoke those conversations, to remember why we're here today. I bought this the sweatshirt for this particular image probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, because I was really moved by the way it made an impact on me. And so I hope that you're all moved as much as I am by the two speakers next that we have. Casey Desjardins Soto and Nehewa. Casey is from Treaty 4 territories, located in Saskatchewan, although she is now based out of Coast Salish territories, also known as Vancouver. Casey is an entrepreneur and a business owner of the Decolonial Clothing, an Indigenous clothing brand. She is also a fancy shawl powwow dancer, an activist, a workshop facilitator, a mother, a wife, and striving to become an inspiring leader for the youth to look up to. Her community work is extensive as she co-created great movements and small organizations such as Protect Our People, Human Trafficking Awareness Group, and the Resistance Campaign, movement that fights for Indigenous sovereignty and their rights to land, water, and way of life. Casey's work is focused around youth empowerment, decolonization, sobriety, and cultural identity. A quote from Casey is, "Let's create a generation that doesn't need to heal, the youth of our future. It is our collective responsibility to contribute to their wellness." Casey is also joined by her partner, Dakota Bear, Nehewa. Dakota is an Indigenous hip-hop artist and activist who was born here in Treaty 6 lands and is now based on Coast Salish territory, also known as Vancouver. His speeches and music carry stories of Indigenous peoples across Canada, leaving listeners enlightened, inspired, and instant fans of his music and message. He's shared stages with legendary greats like Bone Thugs and Harmony, Redman and Method Men, Tech and Knee, and more. I'm probably not saying that one right. Tells you how much I'm into it. His music has been shared by Noisy Exclaim, Hip Hop Canada, Digital Drum, Indigenous Music Countdown, and numerous grassroots news outlets, while his online videos have collectively amassed more than 1 million views and has won 2 awards for Best Indigenous Hip Hop Music Video. Not only is Dakota a hip hop artist and activist, he is also a great leader of our people as he follows in the footsteps of his great-great-great-grandfather, Big Bear. He has mentioned over 100 Indigenous youth. He has mentored over 100 Indigenous youth to build small businesses and share with them his entrepreneurial and leadership skills. He is also the co-owner of Decolonial Clothing, Land Back Records, and Land Back Healing Society, along with his wife, Casey. His quest for love, justice, and peace is unwavering, and his melodic rhythms and iconic beats carrying his message to the masses and beyond. His work with Idle No More, Indigenous rights, missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirited peoples, and the global climate strike movement has intertwined his music with international social justice movements and connected him with fans and followers all across the globe. Please help me welcome Dakota and Casey.
Thank you for that introduction. That was beautiful. Tanse, Casey Nitsikasun, Okinawa Wapikwanani-kwan, Eski Esquiu, Nia Ochi, Treaty 4, Treaty 6 territories, Vancouver, Miigwech-Niiwikon. Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Casey Desjardins. I am Nehiyaw and Anishinaabe from Treaty 4 territory, but here I was born and raised in Saskatchewan. I now live in Vancouver, also known as the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh territories. And I'm really honored to be invited here today to speak to you and to, speak from my heart and share with you some medicines. Well, I receive a lot of medicines from you as well. Being here on Treaty 6 in the homeland of the Métis Nation feels like home. This is where I was born and raised, where my family grew up, where my ancestors lived, and it feels good to be back here. Not too long ago, actually, I used to go to the University of Saskatchewan. A whole different mind state, it was a hard time for me at that time. But before I go into my speech, I just wanted to invite my fellow drum group member. I'm part of Moonstone Drum Group based in Vancouver. It's a women's drum group with all of us come from different nations all across Turtle Island, from the Nehiyaw Nation, the Anishinaabe Nation, the Musqueam, and we formed a circle, a little community together, a home away from home, as we're all scattered across Turtle Island, a way for us to celebrate one another, to honor our sisterhood and that medicine that we get from each other, and learn songs and sing and heal, and serenade the park sometimes in the public. So I just want to start by singing the Women's Warrior song. And this song was created by Martina Pierre. She's from the Lil'wat Nation. And this song is very widely known across Turtle Island, all the rallies, the protests, the events. So if you know this song, please stand up, join with us. We're doing 4 rounds. The very last verse is no drum, and I would just ask you to please put your hand up, as the last verse is dedicated to the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit, and gender fluid peoples. So yes, please join us, and thank you so much. And this is Jade Brass. Damn, I felt that one right in my soul. Thank you, Jade, for the medicine. Whew. Today I woke up with a really heavy feeling. And I recall this feeling waking up almost every year on this day, and sometimes it'll slip my mind. I feel like as Indigenous people, we're always fighting. We're always fighting for justice. We're always fighting to be heard. We're always standing there representing ourselves proudly. And it's exhausting, man. It's tiring. Honestly, it's hard to do that all the time, and I still continue to do that, whether my voice shakes, whether I'm scared, whether I'm nervous, whether I'm sad and depressed, because, our people have suffered for so long, and we continue to suffer, and a lot of our voices go unheard or unnoticed. I feel a lot of support, from my people, from my family, and that's what really gets me going each day. That's what helps me to get out of bed, that medicine, and I know that I can go and smudge, and I hear my children laughing, and this is what my grandparents and my parents worked so hard for me to experience. My grandparents come from, they were victims of the residential school, and the pain and the trauma that was inflicted upon them in those schools trickles down the line to me, and sometimes I wonder where these feelings come from, this anxiety and this depression and this mental health that I go through. I have bouts of that a lot. And, I'm really quick to put the blame on myself. What did I do wrong? Why can't I do this right? Comparing myself to my white counterparts. Why can't I do that? Why can't I be there? Why can't I feel that way? And it was a lot of blame, a lot of shame I would put onto myself and to my family. And I think a lot of us Indigenous folks can relate to that. Before I was able to understand the effects of colonialism, the effects of colonial violence, and how that stems down and how I'm affected by it. And once I started to realize that all these things are so intersectional, is when I started to really love myself, and I'm proud of myself for doing it, for being here, for showing up every single day when I even feel like I can't. It's because my grandparents, my ancestors, my parents have worked so hard to heal what they have been through. And I can't speak to my parents' experiences because I was a different generation. And I know that the healing work that I do, it affects not only the 7 generations that come behind me, my daughter and my future grandkids, but also the generations that were before me. And that's really a profound thing when it comes to healing and when it comes to taking care of yourselves, is that it's not only for you. You affect so much people, it's a ripple effect. And walking on that red road, sober, that is a very important thing for our people, and I can understand where everyone's at in their journeys. But being sober and walking on that healing journey, going to ceremonies, receiving my spirit name, is what really helped me navigate this colonial world that I'm in. It helps me to ground myself. I wear my ribbon skirt made by my mom. The clothing that I wear comes from Decolonial Clothing. Me and my fiance started it in 2020. And everything we do alone, separately, individual, it's a representation of our people, of our family lineage. And I'm very, very honored to be here, and I'm very proud of everyone to be here. This is a very important day, missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit, and gender fluid peoples. It should be talked about every day, not just May 5th. And with our clothing line, we have items that are dedicated to support and encourage the conversation and keep that conversation going, because the momentum, as soon as it starts, we don't want it to stop. I feel every year we're getting stronger as a whole, as a community, to speak about these issues. As a little girl, I never realized how many issues were so intersectional and how they affected me and my family. But when I was growing up, I had this memory of this distinct, very old memory of the police knocking at my mom's door because they were doing an investigation on my mom's friend that she was with that night who had went missing. And that was so normalized in my life. It was so normalized in the Indigenous communities to go through these traumatic experiences, to go through trauma and just thinking that's normal, until I went to school and I was literally the only Native person. I went to St. Vladimir School in Sutherland. I actually just ran into one of my old childhood students, and it was like, I just felt shocked because he really congratulated me on the work that I do, and just hearing that, I'm still healing from what I've been through as a child, and the shame that I held for my cultural identity. But now I stand here proud, and I'm really, really proud of all of us for coming out here to speak on these issues that really affect us. Me and my fiance started many different organizations, and grassroots organizations, Protect Our People being one of them. A very scary thing to talk about, human trafficking and human exploitation. And a lot of Indigenous women fit that demographic, as we've been, victimized so many times. We're 10 times more likely to be missing or murdered or violently assaulted. And that's scary because I'm a mom to a daughter and to a son. And I struggle to find the words to share with them that this is a reality that we live in so-called Canada. That our people, we're constantly looking behind our backs. We're walking in fear. How do I share that with my daughter? How do I get her prepared for the realities that we live in? It's a scary thing. You know, and I see a lot of work being done by the Indigenous communities to protect our women, to protect ourselves, to protect our communities. But I rarely see the work being done at a government level, at the institutional level. The police, what are the police doing? Are they here? Does anyone see RCMP, the police here? Because I don't feel safe around them. I don't know about you guys, but I don't. I know my fiance doesn't either, as an Indigenous man. So what are they doing? Because that's the questions that I have now, because I see a lot of our people on the front lines, our bodies on the front lines, protecting our women at the landfill, pushing for these things that should have been implemented a long time ago. I know now that MMIWG, Two-Spirit Trans, is now a Canada-wide emergency, but does anyone know what that really means? Does that mean that there will be alerts going out when Indigenous women go missing or are found murdered? Will it mean that the police and the court system and the criminal justice system will take those seriously? Does that mean that our voices will actually be heard? Because I hear a lot of these words, and I feel like a lot of this talk happens, but where's the action? Because we are taking action as Indigenous people every day. Every single day we wake up, we put on our beaded earrings, we put on our ribbon shirts or our ribbon skirts, we smudge, and we thank Creator that every day we're here. I'm thankful to be alive. I'm lucky to be alive right now, actually. And while I'm here walking on this Mother Earth askew, and I feel the sun besom on me, I know that everything that I do as an Indigenous woman, as an Indigenous mother, that I am going to make sure that I don't ever stop fighting for our rights, for our justice. I never stop talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women, no matter how uncomfortable it makes a person feel. Because that's my life, that's my reality. And it's hard, but we do it. And what really gives me the strength is this right now. I feel so warm and held by my community. And this is one of the first times speaking here in Saskatoon, the place that I was born and raised, because over 10 years ago, me and my partner moved to Vancouver. And over there, you know, instantly as we moved there, we connected with the community and started learning about the Indigenous rights over there, how it was unceded territories, and there's so much infringement from the government in those lands, Wet'suwet'en. And that sparked something in me. I think that was the turning point in my healing journey, where this is why I felt this way. This is why I felt that way. Colonial violence and systemic oppression is all a big part of what we're going through. So it's not your fault that we feel this way. It's not our fault that we can't do this or do that. You know, we're healing generations of hurt and trauma and abuse and violence. So where we are today is exactly where we should be. And I'm very thankful and honored to be in the presence of you all, because that's what's really, really bringing me healing right now. Like I said, I woke up very heavy, these emotions, and I didn't come here with a plan. You know, a lot of the time I just speak from my heart, because that's where a lot of the truth comes from, a lot of those raw emotions. And I'm really thankful for my sister to sing that song with me and really ground me in the work that I do and everything that I do, whether it be Decolonial Clothing, the Land Back Healing Society, Protect Our People, Land Back Records. it's all grounded in this truth. It's all grounded in the teachings that I was brought up on, that, you know, all the work that I do is grounded in that medicine. And that's where, when we walk with our 2 feet on these lands, wherever we go in life, whether we're going to the university, entrepreneurship, be grounded in that medicine, be grounded in that truth, because we have to speak it every day. When we did our Protect Our People walk, what was it, back in 2018? We met with the mayor, we met with the chief police, we met with many different community members, and we held a smudge walk to heal these streets and these communities. All the while we were doing that work, doing the community engagement, there was 2 or 3 separate incidents with human trafficking in the city, Saskatchewan, also known as one of the hub triangle cities of the human trafficking ring that happens here in Canada, in case you guys didn't know that. And that scares me. That shakes me to my core, knowing that as an Indigenous woman, with my mom and my sisters and my nieces and nephews being here, that's a scary truth and reality. So we spoke with the Human Exploitation Unit at the Saskatoon Police Service. I think there was only 2 staff members working in that unit. They didn't have enough workers to have a human trafficking, human exploitation unit here in Saskatoon, one of the hub cities. And I felt very, I felt like I just hit a brick wall, because we were getting all this momentum. And as soon as we were, meeting with the Saskatoon police chief, it was like, stop. There's nothing we can do. It is what it is. And that's what I mean. Us grassroots, whatever resources that we have, we're grabbing what we can do. We're putting these pieces together. As young people, I'm only 28, putting these pieces together, trying to make a better world for our future generations. And we don't have any resources. We're grabbing what we can have. We're asking for help. We're asking the higher ups to help us with this work that we're doing. And I think the more we speak about this, the more we confront, there has to be some sort of change. And I know our people, the Indigenous women, the Indigenous population, will be the leaders in not only that missing and murdered Indigenous women crisis, but climate change, but also the water crisis, because we're standing up there speaking about these tragedies and these crises that we're going through as Indigenous people. But I need to see action and work from the government level, from institutional levels. Because we're exhausted, we're tired, but we still do it every day. My kids are growing up knowing what it is to fight for water, to go and drum, and to take over the roads and blockades. And that's the generation that is up and coming right now, is our children, those young youth. And the youth are leading the way. And imagine what a beautiful world when they are the leaders of this world. When our kids are up there fighting for a life that we were not given, that was taken through residential school, through the PASS system, through all the colonial violence that we have been through as a people. We're healing every single day. And even being here is an act of resistance. Talking about this is an act of resistance. Singing is an act of resistance. Speaking our language is an act of resistance. And this all contributes to the healing of our people, the healing of our nation. So I want you to look around and just feel that pride with you, because all of us are here on the same mission. We all know that this is not right, that our women are constantly victimized. How is that okay? How are we not talking about this every day? Indigenous communities have no water. It's 2023. What's going on? These conversations will continue to happen, and they will be loud. We are louder than ever, and that's what scares them. is that we're not backing down and we're talking about these things, whether it hurts us, whether it's triggering, because a lot of the things we go through is triggering. And it's no wonder why we feel the way that we do feel. But I thank you all, each and every one of you, for being here, for listening, for speaking, for showing up, for wearing your red. I see a lot of decolonial clothing out there, and I thank you so much for your support. Decolonial is more than just a clothing brand. It goes beyond that. We've done so much community work. A lot of our designs, the profits go to our Land Back Healing Society, which targets colonial violence for men and women. We've just held a speaking circle that we have supported with families that are going through addictions and have lost people due to addictions, and doing a burning ceremony and a feast. And this fuels that work. All of this fuels and ignites the fire that we all have. And if yours is going a little dim, here, I'll pass on a little light to you so we can, that's what communal is. That's what community is that when, one of us are not feeling too good, one of us are burning out, that's when we step up. And that's what I like to see, and I have been seeing it here, and I'm very honored for all the speakers and to be here and to be part of this very important conversation that moves beyond a conversation, that I would like to see move beyond a conversation and then just a red shirt. There's so much action involved. So thank you, Hi Miigwech, for listening, for sharing your medicine and allowing me to share my medicine with you. Thank you so much.
I don't know how I'm supposed to top that speech, but I'm going to do my best to carry the medicine. Please give another round of applause for Casey for coming up here, being courageous and sharing her stories and the stories, of our ancestors, our people. My name's Dakota Bear. My spirit name is Sipikasu Piesu. I'm from here, unceded Treaty 6 territory, and me and Casey are both living on the Coast Salish territories, and we just come down here to our homelands to do some speaking and to really come back and get some good medicine for the journey that we're on, because I'm a hip-hop artist. I'm going to share a song with you guys in a little bit. Also, we own Decolonial Clothing, Land Back Records, Land Back Healing Society, a bunch of different initiatives, but it's all grounded in the same thing. It's all addressing a colonialism. It's all giving back to the community. So I'm more than just a hip-hop artist when I introduce myself, when I go to different places to speak. We were just in Los Angeles. We're going all across Turtle Island, and people invite us to share our songs. Casey's a part of the drum group, so she shares her music, and I share mine, and we share our clothing line. But these are just platforms. These are just vehicles. These are just different ways to continue to drive the message and to reach the youth, to inspire the youth, because music and clothing are some of the biggest influences that we have in this world. And so we're using them to really interact and really engage with Indigenous youth. And that's our primary focus, because they're really on the front lines of solving the world's greatest issues right now. And we're very honored to be a part of that work and to help mentor a lot of the youth that are getting into business that we call warrior entrepreneurship, revitalizing Indigenous economies and addressing important issues like missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirited plus people that are living in so-called Canada. And this is now in a national emergency, when we've already known that, and this has been an emergency for us since the very impacts of colonialism 500 years ago, and I'm a son and a grandson to survivors of Indian residential schools and 60 Scoop, and my mom, I witnessed her face extreme violence, and I witnessed her go through all of her addictions, and through that we lived in poverty on the west side of Saskatoon, and we've been through so much. And when I was young, just like Casey said, I didn't understand these issues. I didn't know what the Indian Act was. I didn't know what colonialism was, and a lot of our youth were just surviving. We're just literally in survival mode up against all of these institutions, the justice system, and everything that we face as young people. And so that's why it's important that we use our platforms, and we're more than just clothing line owners. I'm more than just a hip-hop artist, but really we need to start using the platforms that we have and where we are in whatever that we're doing to really address these issues, inspire action, and take action, because that's what's needed. You know, this is an ongoing genocide that we face in Canada. It's not something of the past. This is literally an ongoing genocide, meaning that our women, our men, our boys, our girls, our people are getting murdered at 12 times the rate of any other person in Canada. Yet the government dedicates one single day for us to address these issues when we know that we're on the front line of these issues literally every single day, by raising our babies, by showing them culture, by showing up to these institutions and speaking on behalf of our people, the ones that can't speak, the ones that passed away, that passed on. You know, my mom's friend was Cindy Gladue, and I remember when that was all unfolding and how broken that she was, because that was her best friend growing up. When the inquiry came to Saskatoon, my mom was a part of that, because she had not only witnessed some extreme violence, but she was a part of that and on the end of that extreme violence. And what did the police do? Nothing. She actually got beat by the police when she was younger. The police are involved in the Starlight tours still today. When we were doing Protect Our People, there was like 2 people in that unit when we're telling them that we literally know where human trafficking houses are, because we were doing their job. Like, we were investigating this, and we had become targets ourselves, because obviously, like, human trafficking is very profitable for people, and they're targeting the people that they know that the police doesn't care about. And we already know that the police and the lack of resources that's dedicated to that. And that was very triggering for us, and that was very traumatic for us. And then a year and plus after that, we were trying to guide them to these places, they busted the house, and it was like in the exhibition area is literally a human trafficking house. If you read about it on the news, we were telling them about the house. So a year had went by where women and children and people were suffering from human trafficking at that house, and they just ignored us and said we don't have the resources or whatever their excuses are, because that was just it. There's just straight excuses to us. What we're supposed to do, we're 2 young people. That was like 3 or 4 years ago, so we're younger than we are now. We didn't have any resources. We're not investigators. We're not private investigators, but all we were just concerned community members, you know, and we're doing what we can. And then Saskatoon was identified as a human trafficking hub through Regina and Winnipeg, and it was like a triangle that they had discovered, and there was some more work that had been done. But again, like, circling back to the grassroots community that supported us and continues to do this work, had already been on the front lines trying to advocate for ourselves, and that's why we feel so alone in these struggles. But when we come together as a community, we know that we're not alone. There's a lot of Indigenous people in this crowd, but there's also a lot of non-Indigenous people in this crowd. And I want to acknowledge the speakers before us and the speakers that are coming after us, and the ones on the front lines literally doing this work every single day, because that's what it's going to take. All of us to understand that this is a national emergency. This is a national crisis. This moves beyond today. This is something that we're struggling with every single day. These conversations are triggering to me, to Casey, to a lot of you in the crowd, because we have sisters and aunties, we have moms and cookers, we have people affected directly by this crisis that we're talking about today, and still a lot of our family members are missing, and so a lot of them are murdered and their cases are unsolved. So I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that, and the ones that are really carrying that with them today, because this is very hard work to do. My mom, when I first got sober with Casey, I noticed that it had a domino effect on my family, and me and my mom got a stronger relationship, and she started to get sober, and it just had like this really positive effect within our families, because we decided to break those cycles that were literally forced on us through Indian residential schools and the 60 scoop and all of these policies and assimilation policies, and through colonialism really that forced us into addictions and continuing cycles of abuse and things that we didn't understand as a kid. Like me growing up on Avenue X, I didn't understand all of that, and then Casey came home and she started bringing these papers back about like the Indian Act. And I had no clue what the Indian Act was, and I had no clue in 1951 that they banished our ceremonies and they went underground just for our ceremonies to be practiced today. And I had no clue that they build barbed wire fences around reserves, and then they created the pass and permit system, so you had to literally sign a pass, and then they starved our people and they made them do a lot of different things in our communities and caused a lot of suffering. And I didn't know that as a kid. All I knew that this is my life, and I'm going through a lot of struggles, and so is my mom, and so is my family. But we stopped those cycles, and we created new ones for our children, for my daughter. But it's very hard to try to explain missing and murdered and Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit plus people, this crisis that we're facing, to a young girl that's living in this country, so-called Canada, that's facing these issues that she doesn't even know that she's more likely, 12 times more likely. And that, as me as a father, that scares me. But that also sparks something in me to keep pushing for change and to keep doing the work that me and Casey are doing, because it's important. Like I said, we're more than just singers or dancers or performers. I'm not here just to entertain you, or when we go different places across Turtle Island, I'm not there just to entertain them. I'm there to do a lot of the work that Creator put us here to do, to speak, to share medicine, to work together, to build communities together, to use platforms and resources that we're creating for ourselves, to put back into our communities that are doing the work. And I just want to say thank you for inviting us to come and just really speak and share some of that medicine here on our home territories, Treaty 6. It feels really good to be home, because the last time we were here, a few years ago, we were doing the rally, and we ended off at the Saskatchewan police, and it was just like a lot of it was just very triggering, because obviously like they didn't do anything about it, and our work is just, it just became something that was a little too heavy to hold for us. So we decided to keep moving on in different ways and sharing our message in different ways, and just focusing on uplifting youth and amplifying the youth's voices, and just doing this work, because colonialism is multifaceted. There's so many different ways that it affects us. So there's so many different solutions, and being here is one of those solutions, and supporting each other as a community is one of those solutions. And I just want to honor the work, all the work put into the 231 calls to action, addressing this ongoing genocide, addressing this national crisis, this emergency that Indigenous peoples are on the front lines of. And thank you for letting me come here and speak to these issues and just share some of my story, my family story, my mom's story as an Indigenous male, as an Indigenous man, to come just be able to take up a little bit of space and share that. I'm really honored, and I just want to acknowledge that. I'm really thankful for being able to do that and just pass along some of that medicine and just be here, a part of this event. I'm very honored. So I just wanted to share a song with you before we ended off our section of the speech, and just a reminder that there is a walk happening at 5:30 at Vimy Memorial. I hope all of you can be there, and you can spread the word, and you can share the poster, and you can show them a lot of love and show them a lot of support, because that's grassroots work right there, and we need to be able to come together in different ways to support that. So I just wanted to give a reminder for that, and I wanted to share a song with you. It's called Freedom. And I wrote this song shortly after we were doing Protect Our People. And I wrote this song when I was feeling like hopeful and inspired for the future, for our children. And I wrote this song for all the people on the front lines that are doing this work, that are healing ourselves from intergenerational trauma, that are standing up for injustices against colonial violence, that are healing ourselves from addictions, and just breaking those cycles. And I really make music to try and uplift and really connect and really focus on Indigenous youth. So I never did it on these speakers, so I hope it sounds good to you. And the sound guy's back there, so hopefully he cues the music up for me so I can get into it. But this song is called Freedom. My name's Dakota Bear. My fiance is Casey Desjarlais. We're co-founders of Decolonial Clothing. I hope that what we said had some impact to you, so I'm gonna share the song with you.
I'm doing this work as we can't just pray anymore. We must do something, and we need
so
to do
this
it
is
now.
called Freedom, and I wrote this a couple years ago.
I need to get right into this
And I
message
dedicate
so
this
you feel where
to the
I'm
ones on
coming
the
from.
front lines. The people are standing together, there's power in numbers. We will not fall where you want us. We learning the laws you throwing upon us. You throw us in water, we know there's piranhas. The people, they needing a leader. Just know that I'm on it, I'm honest in everything that I do. Every word that I write is true. The people that get it, they know that the picture is bigger. So pull up a seat and you listen. You put in your fist in the air. You know the resistance is here. Get kids off in the distance. We are the kids that you dismiss. We are the targets you just miss. We are descendants of killers and chiefs. Just know that our struggles are brief. Just know that we one and the same. I'm from the prairies, the plains. I'll go my hell until I can braid it again. I'm no longer ashamed. I promise the people our hardships are not going in vain. You hear my voice in the melody, carry the pain. I do not do this for money or fame. I just wanna be me. I just wanna feel free. Has that too much of we ask? Look to the future but learn from the past. I know that sometimes we clash, and it's just life. Chances ain't handed out twice. A man of my word and a man of advice. Listen, I just wanna feel free. We just wanna live our lives. We don't wanna have to worry. Tell me, can you help me? It don't seem like you've been in a hurry. You playing judge and jury. I feel I'm under siege. Get the matches, burn the sage. Chapters over, turn the page. Author of my destiny, but they telling me differently. We just wanna live our lives. We don't wanna have to worry. Tell me, can you help me? It don't seem like you've been in a hurry. I just wanna be me. I just wanna feel free. I swear we've been doing the most. I packed my suitcase and moved to the coast. I promise the next time I come to the city, I'm bringing hope. I'm bringing you, and it's bigger than music. Together we started a movement. Together we stand. We're shaking the earth as we moving. As soon as you look for the answer, you see the solution. Our minds are as clear as the water as soon as you see the pollution. We want the freedom and not the illusion. We are the warriors, the ones that you read in the stories. We are notorious. I just wanna feel free. We just wanna live our lives. We don't wanna have to worry. Tell me, can you help me? It don't seem like you've been in a hurry. You playing judge and jury. I feel I'm under siege. Get the matches, burn the sage. Chapters over, turn the page. Author of my destiny, but they telling me differently. We just wanna live our lives. We don't wanna have to worry. Tell me, can you help me? It don't seem like you've been in a hurry. I just wanna feel free. Treaty 6 Territory, I hope you enjoyed me and Casey's speech and the medicine that we shared with you today. I just want to say thank you to the organizers for bringing us out. And when I say no more, you say Stolen Sisters. No more? No more? No more? Thank you so much. My name's Dakota Bear. This is Casey Desjardins, and we're very honored to be back on Treaty 6 Territory. And remember, go support the walk, 5:30, Vimeo Memorial. We'll see you there.
Thank you so much, Casey and Dakota. Our last speaker today is Darlene Seacott. And Darlene is coming to us from the East Kowak Iwichituchik. I'm trying. That was better than the first time, I promise. She is a Cree from Beardy's Okamasis First Nation near the town of Duck Lake, Saskatchewan, and was educated by River Academy in Prince Albert and the University of Saskatchewan. She is a survivor of the Federal Indian Day School and daughter of 2 Indian residential school survivors. Darlene has retired from the Gordon Tutusis Nikanawin Theater in July 2022 after 9 years due to health issues. Darlene's past experience in the workplace included executive assistant at Saskatchewan Indian Institute of Technologies, department secretary at the U of S Native Studies, now Indigenous Studies. Darlene is also an 18-year member of the Saskatoon Concerned Citizens Group, I gotta look at my Iskawak Iwichituchik. Okay, better that time even. Women Walking Together, whose focus is on missing, murdered, and Indigenous women and girls, two-spirited, and diverse genders. Darlene received the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal in January 2013 and the Queen Elizabeth II Platinum Jubilee Medal in 2023. For this volunteerism, a national finalist and later a junior for Samara.com Everyday Political Citizens Project. Darlene has written, published articles, and engages in local, provincial, and national interviews, media outlets on missing and murdered Indigenous women. Darlene has been the non-legal advocate and co-chair for Women Walking Together, who had party withstanding status for national inquiry to MMIWG2S. She currently lives in Saskatoon, focuses on reconciliation, and advisor to, I gotta learn Cree, bad. With her, I'm gonna let you say it when you come up here, with her husband, Chris Seacott, and mother of Christopher, Corey Areen Sunflower, and grandmother to Albert Jr., Deshawn, Joseph Desta, all who enjoy a local, provincial, and national arts scene. Please welcome Darlene.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for Jamie, for Dr. Angela, for inviting Esquewick to be part of today, and our second time speaking with this Red Dress Day activity on campus. I just wanted to kind of just reflect about the last 24 hours and do a little bit of statistics and thank yous and read a poem. The last 24 hours is, been the full moon, and listening to Linda share about her process of, offering to, Grandmother Moon when we're going through changes in the cycle. And I was over at the Dakota Dunes Resort yesterday evening for stargazing, and it was really nice to be connected that way with the Dakota Nation and Dakota language teachings, and connected it to the process that they're doing with Indigenous knowledge. And being the mother of two older sons that are Dakota, I just felt it was important to keep learning that Indigenous knowledge, not only for them, but for my son's two Dakota children. For what I've heard throughout today so far is that there was a lot of statistics and continues to be. I just want to add what I saw on a new Westminster in, they did a red dress campaign. It's not to shame Saskatoon. We've done so much. If you have some time, there is a lot of work that's being done. But I was just so proud of what they were doing. But they did first start off with the truth, and that Indigenous women and girls are 5 times more likely to experience violence than any other population in Canada. And this violence tends to result in more serious harm. Indigenous women make up 16% of all female homicide victims and 11% of missing women, even though Indigenous people only make 4.3% of the population of Canada. From 2001 to 2014, the average rate of homicides involving Indigenous females was 4 times higher than of homicides involving non-Indigenous females. Violence against Indigenous women and girls is systemic and a national crisis that requires urgent, informed, and collaborative action. Current public data on MMIW2S oversimplifies and underrepresents the scale of the issue, yet still demonstrates a complex and pervasive pattern of violence against Indigenous women and girls, who are often targeted because of their gender and Indigenous identity. In their Red Dress campaign, there is a message from their police department. And they did do a proclamation. You can probably find that on their website. I just want to do more thank yous than anything because I was the last speaker and I saw the list of all the people that were ahead of me. And I just wanted to do thanks most importantly. Tanse and hello everyone on this May 5th National Red Dress Day here at the University of Saskatchewan to remember missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit and Gender Plus. I want to thank Dr. Jamie for putting this together and the faculty, students, and staff. Special thank you to Linda Young, who I have known for many years here in Saskatoon, whom sat in the National Inquiry family hearings held here in November 2017 on behalf of her family's lived experience. Thank you to Teedley Linklater for her song. Over the years, her and her mother, Elder Maria Linklater, have sang and prayed over many Sisters in Spirit annual October 4th vigils and marches for Esquewek. Thank you to Honorable Lua Gibb, the provincial court judge, who resided over one of the proceedings of Don Walker, who is currently on house arrest for fleeing Canada to escape domestic family violence. Much admiration and compassion to hip-hop artist Dakota Bear and his wife. When he was living in our city, he had approached Myrna and our team of Esquig on his wish to support any of the MMIWG activities in awareness. We also witnessed the power of his prayers, the sacred fire during the loss of his brother in the river. This is where we truly believe our loved ones find their way home. He never gave up to what was an insurmountable task with the winter and water elements of those days. Hi to your magic and gift. To the university in particular, I am so very proud of you all and proud for you for making every effort to tackle the calls for justice, not only with the academics but with the administration. It's truly inspiring. The reason I want to mention the administration academics, yesterday as I was printing May 5th photographs of the teller at Walmart, a young Muslim woman was wearing her hijab, and she wanted to share that she had just finished doing a 10-page paper on Red Dress Day. And this is the kind of magic that commemorates and brings light to these gatherings. We don't know why these little moments happen, but I think they're there definitely for a purpose. We witnessed almost miracles and instances of our community learning about the crisis of Indigenous women in this country. As a former staffer of this university, and how the current unit of Indigenous engagement is addressing pretending Indianism, bringing awareness of red dress and reconciliation, my heart feels not only inspired, but feel more resolved to carry on. It is not easy being Indigenous, being female, and living in a genocidal state of mind. I feel encouraged to witness in my lifetime the efforts this university has provided in being a strong Indigenous engagement entity. I'm going to read a poem that my sister, Lori Delorme, asked me to read for their family for missing Ashley Morin. It is written by her brother, David Delorme, who's my brother. Missing. We call out their names as we search around, hoping and praying, will they ever be found? It happened one night when they're out with a friend, each vanished from sight. Will this pain ever mend? Each face is a person, each one is ignored. Where have they gone? Will there be more? There are generations of loss, pain, and despair. We fight for their honor. This treatment is unfair. Remember their names, speak them out loud, educate others, stand tall, and be proud. By David Delorme. Thank you.
Thank you all so much thank you, Darlene, for your words. That was beautiful. At this point in the program, we'd like to invite you all to have lunch with us and to continue the conversation. Again, I can't tell you how grateful I am that our high school students are here, that our university community has come out to have these conversations and to be present. We've had amazing words from Judge Gibb, from Darlene, from our provost, Casey and Dakota. This has been a very, very moving day, and a day that we need to continue to do every year to be sure that we're having these conversations all year long. So thank you so much for coming out. Lunch will be served. We have box lunches, so we're inviting you to sit in the warm sun and to have a conversation and to continue this fight. Thank you.